why do you care so much about black people?
I'm being interviewed today still as a settler, still as a privileged white person in what we call a democratic South Africa, but which is certainly not democratic. Sadly, what we see is that white South Africans don't seem to have any moral compass. So people like myself, we've never offered reparations. We've never knelt down before black people and said, forgive me for the great atrocities I've committed, not only under apartheid, but under colonialism. Black people are still children of a lesser God in what we would call a democratic government and under what we once thought was a black government. But the ANC is day by day showing itself as a government that stands for the interests of whiteness rather than the dignity of the black child.
Now, your political views are unequivocally aligned with the politics of the left. One wonders, why do you care so much about black people? Because mostly when I listen to you, you talk about the plight of black people, the poor and the marginalized.
Well, perhaps to introduce myself, I always describe myself as a white settler, as a true foreigner in the country.
Yeah.
And perhaps we can look at that later, this dreadful concept and practice of African brothers and sisters turning on African brothers and sisters. So I'm being interviewed today still as a settler, still as a privileged white person in what we call a democratic South Africa, but which is certainly not democratic. So perhaps when I look at what my forefathers did to this country, I feel it's incumbent upon me to try and rectify some of the brutal acts of great inhumanity conducted by people like me against black South Africans. So I think it's a matter of justice, of standing for justice here. I've also been quite vocal on the Palestine issue. So I think to be a human being is to speak about justice wherever you see it.
Yeah.
Sadly, what we see is that white South Africans don't seem to have any moral compass. So people like myself, we've never offered reparations. We've never knelt down before black people and said, forgive me for the great atrocities I've committed, not only under apartheid, but under colonialism. So I think why I've written No White Lies and about the lack of white accountability is because I'm trying to appeal to white people to shift their national consciousness from one of privilege and white supremacy and entitlement and arrogance, and I can go on a lot, to actually recognize the sins that you've committed in this country, whether it's through you or the actions of those that came before you. And you speak about national reconciliation, but white people aren't interested in reconciliation.
That's very sad. And how are you being treated in the white community for your political stance that you have taken as a white person?
Yeah, I think I've always been a black sheep in the community. And although I've said to letters, I've been on television, and I've said, dear white fellow South Africans, it's time for us to give back the land. It's time for us to repent for the things that we've done. Because only when we do that can we speak about a stronger together nation, can we speak about reconciliation. And generally what I get is a lot of hate mail, which is disappointing. So I've come to the conclusion, sadly so, that white people are not going to participate in the emancipation of South Africa. In fact, they'll do everything to make sure that this land is never transformed. They are holding on to stolen goods. And yes, possibly I'm seen as the enemy of whiteness. I'm seen as a race traitor. But I actually wear that label very proudly, because if being a race traitor means trying to bring an equitable and just society, then you can label me that any day.
And when we talk about issues of racism, they are still rife in South Africa. Given the state of racism or the rate at which it happens in South Africa, would you say South Africa is a rainbow nation?
South Africa, if South Africa is a rainbow nation, then the rainbow nation must be a very big storm, actually. And I think we did a great disservice to this country and to Black South Africans, and in a way, white South Africans in 1994. And in my book, I write about how reconciliation is actually a white man's medicine. It has done a lot of harm to Black people. It may not have been intended to cause harm, but it has done no healing. So what we saw in 1994 was Black liberation put on the back burner. In fact, in my book, I speak about a stillborn democracy. And I think 1994 took emphasis off the Black struggle in what I call this absolute nonsense of non-racialism. I'm not an advocate of non-racialism. I describe myself quite proudly as a former charterist, where this coming together of white people and Black people is seen as such a wonderful thing. I don't think it is a wonderful thing. We cannot speak about reconciliation until we speak about being equal partners. And as it stands now, I'm a white privileged person, and Black people are still children of a lesser God in what we would call a democratic government and under what we once thought was a Black government. But the ANC is day by day showing itself as a government that stands for the interests of whiteness rather than the dignity of the Black child.
And what do you think is the reason behind white supremacy? Why do we still have white people who still believe that they are more superior than Black people in South Africa?
You know, white supremacy it's actually a very long, we could call marketing campaign. It's been going on for 300 years, centuries, not only in South Africa, but across the world. And white people have used the notion of being superior to conquer, unfairly so, other countries, other races. And I mean, it's a strategy that works for white people because it allows white mediocrity to trump over Black excellence time and time again. We see that in a party like the DA, where we have the most ridiculously uneducated and quite stupid man, John Steenhuisen. But when you look at some of the Black women who competed against him, they were actually outstanding achievers, very strong, well-educated, knowledgeable, and well-traveled Black women. But they didn't stand a chance. So still in South Africa, we have the mantra of do not disturb white supremacy and white privilege.
There you have it, guys. Our African leaders try to do their best, in their speeches and try to make speeches that actually to show, their efforts in trying to help manage the challenges which Africa is actually facing through and has been facing through since the colonial times. And so we here to really listen to these speeches and to share our thoughts in the comments. And so whatever it is you guys think about these speeches, please do share your thoughts in the comments.
Thank you for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please share and like and subscribe because that's the way you support Kwazemi as a channel, an Afrocentric channel, where we try to understand deeper issues in African history and hopefully develop a collective intelligence on how we wish to build the Africa we want to see as people of Africa. See you in the next one.